Hi, folks. This is Keith.
This is Andy. Welcome to Brockton Bay.
Welcome to the Brockton Bay Chronicles, reviewing Worm by Wildbow. We're back from our summer hiatus. Today we'll be starting what many folks consider unofficially Book 2 of Worm. Andy, what's up for review today?
We will be reviewing Arc 9, Sentinel. And as far as new business, we don't have anything, but welcome back to our regular listeners and welcome aboard if you're new. We're glad you're here.
And so, since we're coming off our hiatus and nothing new really to report, we'll dive right into our point-by-point discussion. And we'll start off Arc 9, Chapter 1, Sentinel, and we have the arrival of Weld in Brockton Bay. He's coming in from his previous location where he was the team leader of the wards in Boston, I believe it was. And Director Piggott is there to meet him at the airport, which is shut down because it's been under attack recently.
This was a real interesting start to this arc. I thought one thing that you almost never think about, or I rarely think about with comic book type setups after there's been a gigantic battle, is the aftermath. And, you know, here Wildbow is starting right off with that, recognizing that, not casting any aspersions here, but Brockton Bay is like a war zone. Everybody's kind of fighting for themselves. Basic systems are broken down, and it's not been a fast recovery by any stretch. So it's a pretty bleak picture that Weld is walking into here.
Right. And initially, when he arrives, he kind of wonders if he, for the first time, apparently, if he's getting in over his head. We get a initial description of how he relates when it comes to dealing with metallic surfaces and how he has to be mindful of where he reaches and where he touches. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought was that he kind of reminded me of Colossus from the X-Men, although Colossus is able to obviously shift back and forth, and Weld is stuck in this state all the time. Although he does have this minor ability to shift at least sounds like the molecular composition of his dermis, if you will, his epidermis.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting way to do it. And this comes up a few times during this arc where we're getting more kind of into almost the chemistry or the physics of the parahumans that are radically changed like this.
Right, the Case 53s. Because if you remember, Weld is a Case 53.
Yeah, that's right.
Director Piggott greets him and takes him onto the helicopter where they're going to be transported towards headquarters. And she gives him a brief rundown of the state of the city. Hands him over some folders with information on the local villain groups, his new team, gives him a breakdown of the personnel, and tells him that, Flechette, who is an outsider from New York, I believe, is going to be joining the wards team to help fill out the ranks until they get some more permanent members to replace, I believe, the 3 deceased wards were Aegis, Gallant, and I believe Browbeat. So losses were pretty heavy on the wards.
Yeah, they definitely were, and they, at least in the case of Aegis and Gallant, they were really prime members of the team, and so the team is having a hard time without them. One thing I'd like to point out was that I like the way Wildbow kind of used Weld's introspection to remind us of what the different classifications are and kind of where Weld falls on the scale as a brute and a changer. So I thought it was funny the way Wildbow kind of said the helicopter registered Weld getting on it with his 600 pounds. It's like, whoa, okay, this guy is pretty dense.
Yeah.
And then they touch a little bit later on how he can't really taste much of anything
Yeah.
anymore, and he doesn't need to eat much anymore. And it's kind of, yeah, it's getting into some interesting,
Very creative on Wildbow's part.
yeah, and stuff that, again, you don't think about a lot. When you watch movies, you're flipping through a comic book, it's just kind of, oh yeah, that building fell down, or oh wow, that person's made of slime.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, without thinking about, well, what would it be like? How does a slime person eat?
Exactly.
So it's, yeah, some interesting insights and additional perspectives you don't get in the kind of Marvel DC type stuff.
So as they're taking a helicopter ride, and he and the director are discussing the villains in the area, we find out that in the wake of the death of their leader, Empire 88 has splintered, and we have two groups remaining: Fenrir's Chosen, Fenrir's Chosen, and the Pure. Hookwolf's running the first group, and Purity is running the second group. So that group of races has shattered, and there's the merchants. Pardon me, the merchants have been causing havoc, and some of the other groups that she mentions with regards to priorities: Fault Line's crew, Coil, the Undersiders, and a couple of these groups, including the Undersiders, Pigott says don't worry about. Did that surprise you?
It did, yeah. And I started wondering how far in the future this was, or if it was going in a totally different direction. Obviously, at the end of Arc 8, things were pretty disrupted, and it's hard to know where things were going to go with anything. The Protectorate was in bad shape. The wards were in bad shape. The Undersiders were obviously totally messed up. The whole Brockton Bay area has been devastated. So it's not surprising that, it's kind of a going in a different direction, but to not have them mentioned other than as a kind of a footnote of, oh yeah, they were there, but don't worry about them. It's kind of like, hold on a minute. I thought they were the central part of the whole story here. So,
well, you'll have to stay tuned and see what happens with that.
Darn it! I want to read ahead.
No, sorry, dude, that's not allowed. So she goes, after they talk about the team, his new team, and the villains in the area. She goes on to what she considers more mundane things, including his schooling and his living arrangements and his allowance and so forth. And she talks about the fact that long term, they want to groom him for a place in the main protectorate as a member of that team, because Director Pigott has the vision of making civilians more comfortable with parahumans, making them more comfortable with the idea of rogues, people who just exist and use their power for financial gain, marketing or whatever. Any thoughts on that little nugget there?
I thought it was interesting because that's kind of the central theme of one of my favorite comics, the X-Men, where it's like, well, normals are going to feel threatened by people who have superpowers. There's just, it's kind of like, well, how are we going to keep from just turning into peons compared to these people? So the fact that they've kind of got this plan is interesting and is a good way of dealing with this problem. The challenge then, though, is to get folks that are a good face of the parahuman group, if you will. And so Weld fits that, at least where he's at right now. I mean, he's a young man just coming into that. And so, but he's got good potential. They're seeing that, and trying to kind of manipulate might be too strong a word, but at least groom him.
Yeah.
Make sure he's in that mindset to move into that role. One thing though, on the term rogue,
Mm-hmm.
from my D&D background, I always thought rogue was kind of cool. I've never, I mean, you talk about like a rogue wave or a
Mm-hmm.
rogue operative or whatever. And to me, it's not meant, maybe it's because I'm kind of a wannabe rebel, but it's not so much a bad person as somebody who just doesn't want to necessarily be pigeonholed or to be a blind rule follower.
Right.
And so I don't know. I don't have as many negative connotations about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see where, in the sense of somebody, especially the folks that are able to manipulate others, play with their emotions, that kind of thing, rogues could be pretty negative. So I get it from that aspect. But I guess I kind of think of myself as a rogue a little bit. So
Yeah, the rogue at heart. Yeah,
there you go.
there you go. So as they arrive, they're coming in and landing at the ward's HQ. Pickett offers to go down and introduce him to the team, and Weld figures that he'd be better off going in and introducing himself without her. So he heads downstairs, walks in, and meets the team, and things don't really go too smoothly, do they?
No. And I mean, it's hard for someone from the outside to understand and grasp what these folks have been through. And on top of that, I try to think back to myself when I was Weld's age, and I was totally oblivious most of the time to trying to interact with folks. As you very well know, you helped me become an actual functioning, social human being. So
I'm not taking credit for all that, but
so it's understandable that he would struggle with this a lot, not really knowing the dynamics coming in. It's one thing to read it in a folder. It's total another thing to have lived through it. And somebody like Piggott isn't probably the best person to assess how the team is doing anyway. So
yeah,
he's getting a skewed picture right from the get-go.
she's seems to be all about the data. And I mean, based on how you presented it, if she would have given him maybe a heads up and say, hey, the team's a little battered down right now, so keep that in mind as you go down to talk to him. Even that little statement might have helped guide Weld as he went down to meet his new team. But she didn't have any words of encouragement, not encouragement, but any cautionary words like that for him.
Right. And you don't know if it's because she's not really equipped, or like you said, she's more data driven and doesn't care about the emotions or the team interactions unless it's screwing up the
performance of the team.
The performance, exactly. Or it could be that she is ruthless enough that she wants to throw Weld in the deep end and see if he can swim. She knows he's stepping into a pile of poo, and
let's see what you got, kid.
Exactly. So I don't know. I think about Ender's Game. I don't know if you remember that, but I just watched it again recently.
The book though.
Okay. Even in the movie though, they pointed out, the general kept saying, no, we can't do anything to help him. We can't do anything to make him think that he's got anybody to help him. And so I was thinking about that a little bit with Piggott, where maybe that was her thing, was that she needs him to think that he's gotta do a lot on his own. And so let him kind of walk into the trap, so to speak.
Yeah, and at the end of as we hit toward the end of the chapter, Vista kind of gives it to Weld for not knowing the names of the guys that he was replacing, and I get it. Poor Weld, he says, I just got here. Weld said helplessly. I just got told by a preteen. He thought. If you, my heart felt for the guy at that moment, but again, new guy, beaten down team, not a lot of guidance from the director. It's just, well, sink or swim, big fella. What you gonna do? And that moves us on into chapter 2, and here we get a chapter from Flechette's POV, and she is out looking to meet up with Shadowstalker. And upon finding her and trying to say hello, Shadowstalker spins around and shoots a couple of crossbow bolts at her. Surprise.
Good old Shadowstalker. The devastation that's hit the city has made her even more crappy of a person, it seems like, than she was before, which seems hard to understand, hard to contemplate. But yeah, Flechette's just trying to figure out, she's kind of probationary, if you will, or temporary, and so she's trying to just do the best she can to help out, and she almost gets killed for her trouble. So,
well, I mean, to Shadowstalker's credit, one of those few times we can say that she did at least have tranquilizer bolts in this instance in there, and so Flechette wasn't gonna take one to the chest and go down. It was just gonna put her to sleep if she got hit. So the two young heroines talk and decide how they're gonna run a dual patrol. Early on, Shadowstalker made the comment that she doesn't really do the team thing unless they make her, kind of speaking to her standoffish nature. And even in the writing, at several different points in this chapter, or pardon me, in this entire arc, whenever the team is together, Shadowstalker is kind of that lone individual apart from the rest of the group. And here is where she just kind of says that she doesn't do it. She doesn't do the team thing. And then we see evidence of that later on.
It definitely goes right along with what we've seen of her in the past. It is kind of putting out there explicitly that she's this lone wolf, from the time she quote unquote joined the wards or was forced to join the wards. You figure it was just kind of a means to an end to keep from getting in trouble. But she's not happy with it. She lets anybody who's around know that she's not happy with it, and it's generally kind of miserable to hang out with her. So,
and as the chapter goes along, we get Flechette describing her power and how she uses it. Do you want to comment on that expand your thoughts or express your thoughts on that?
Well, this is Wildbow coming up with some interesting description of what might be going on. The part where he's talking about her focusing power into an object, resulting in general physics kind of being pushed aside.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's got the fine grained control that she can make it last longer or shorter, have more power or less power, effects to allow for one element to be greater or less than another. And as a result, her ammunition, her bolts can just go through anything.
Right.
And it's just kind of amazing that it would do this, but it's pretty cool to think about. It's really useful, and she's learned how to use it for a lot of good things. So it's really cool, again, the way Wildbow describes it.
As the two heroines go on their patrol, Shadowstalker in her shadow state is able to move at a much faster clip, and Flechette has to use her equipment to scale buildings and so forth. And Shadowstalker comes across a woman who is being accosted and assaulted, on the verge of being assaulted by some thugs. What was your take on that? Let's talk about from the time Shadowstalker sees him down to the end, where Shadowstalker is all about letting that lady get her licks in on those goons.
It definitely highlights Shadowstalker's feeling about revenge or justice, with quotes around it.
Right.
She almost seems like a Judge Dredd kind of character. It's just, I'm in charge. At one point, she says, judge, jury, and if need be, executioner. And we know that's totally against what the Protectorate stands for, and for good reason. If parahumans just start executing normals, then even the people who are law-abiding citizens are going to have a big problem with that. So, but yeah, Shadowstalker she's like holding off because nothing has happened yet. And Flechette's like, why aren't you trying to stop things from happening?
Yeah.
Usually we see in portrayed in movies and stuff that the police are trying to diffuse a situation, not let it get to be something ugly, and then jumping in and laying waste to whatever's in front of them. So Flechette's definitely taken aback by this approach and is not okay with it. And it just, Shadowstalker keeps escalating. And as you pointed out, it gets to the end where the thugs are pretty much taken out of commission, and Shadowstalker is willing to let the woman beat up on some of the thugs because of stuff that's happened to her daughter. And, there's a certain eye for an eye kind of logic, I guess, that applies. But
yeah. Is this another one of those instances where Wildbow is making us kind of go, yeah, I get you, but no. You know what I'm saying?
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, that's been his kind of modus operandi all along, right?
Seems like it.
Get us to try to look at, good versus evil, and then say, all right, well, what if I blur the line about this part of it? Is that still good, or is it getting toward evil? How are you feeling? So he's doing that again to us. I hadn't really thought about that, but I think you bring up a good point.
If you take her sociopathic tendencies away from her, Shadowstalker would be a pretty kick butt cape.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, especially, it's not for a few more chapters, but they talk a lot about her, again, the physics or the chemistry that goes on, and, how she obviously in her kind of gaseous form doesn't have any organs. So and so it's like, wow, that'd be pretty slick. Kind of like the Flash being able to move so fast that he can basically vibrate through walls.
Right.
And the stuff that she can do is pretty mind blowing. So yeah, if it wasn't for her being all messed up in the head, then I could admire her abilities a lot. But as it is, it's just like, oh man, why does she have to have such cool stuff?
Right. I think that she and Flechette make a nice team too. I mean, as the fight demonstrates.
Definitely good pairing. Yeah, and in fact, Shadowstalker is a little envious of some of the cool Tinker gadgets that Flechette has, where it keeps her from running out of stuff because of being able to clone things on the fly. So that would be a good combo if it weren't for the little sociopathic thing going on.
Yeah. So the two heroines defuse the situation, beat the crap out of the thugs. The lady they rescued, as we said, gets some licks in, and then she flees. And Flechette's like, you know what? I don't think I want to hang with you anymore. And Shadowstalkers, I don't care. I told you I don't do the team thing anyway, so I'll finish my patrol on my own, and I'll see you later. Bye. And Flechette, as she said, she's only been in town a few hours, and the first thing she has to deal with is Shadowstalker's attitude. Anyway, so she pardon me, Flechette calls into the base, tell them how everything went, and asks for direction to where Parian's territory is. Parian, as you remember, was one of the few people who in the area who she got to talk with prior to the Leviathan fight. So she heads over to Parian's where she's staying and is greeted by a big, gigantic cloth gorilla.
I had kind of forgotten about Parian, but then yeah, when the cloth giant dolls started showing up, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. But this is a great juxtaposition to the earlier interaction where it's kind of like, hey, I'd like to connect with you on a human relationship kind of way. And the first interaction is like, nope, not going to happen.
Right.
I'm cool. All the rest of you suck. And, if you're standing there, okay. But if you're not, that's better. And then Flechette goes and finds somebody who seems kind of strange and kind of a loner, but is definitely somebody who wants to interact and is grateful for an opportunity to kind of connect.
Yeah, Parian, again, she's a rogue. She had no interest in fighting, and the place that she's staying is she's got in a building with her friends and close relatives. And those individuals who were there prior to their arrival said, "Hey, if you're willing to fight and protect our area, we'll have you guys stay and share the food and supplies we have." She's not a fighter, and as the two young ladies are talking, she discussed how she's afraid that one day somebody's going to show up who she can't defeat.
Yeah, I find it kind of astounding that because of these circumstances, even a parahuman with not really combat skills is being called on to be this protector and this, trying to be the sheriff of this little neighborhood, if you will, and obviously not happy with the situation, but doing the best she can. And Flechette seems to recognize that and is trying to connect with her and let her know that, there's people that will help if she needs it.
After they have a conversation, and as you said, Flechette kind of eases her mind and offers assistance to her. Toward the end of the chapter, the two young ladies decide to take a walk around Parian's territory to make sure everything is okay. And Flechette gives her a business card, says, "Hey, look, I'm staying in town for a few weeks. You can call me, and I can try to get you guys some supplies. And if there's somebody comes around who you don't think you can handle, I may not be able to get here right away, but at least I can try to get to you and as soon as I can to try to help." So that puts Parian's mind at a little better ease, and they go and have a stroll around her territory and talk about things. And that moves us on into chapter 3.
I'd like to just touch on one thing, and that's the fact that they actually exchanged their real names.
Oh, right, certainly, yeah.
Flechette actually took off her mask and so they actually got to see each other as a way of showing that they're really trying to build that trust,
establishing good faith, huh?
Yeah. And at the end of the chapter there, Wildbow has Flechette say she wasn't in this alone. So Flechette was definitely feeling isolated and, tried to connect with somebody with her team, didn't work out, found a way to make another connection. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because as Flechette's thinking early on, it's like, hey, I'm only going to be here, anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. It would be nice to connect, to have a decent friendship with somebody on the squad. But the only other girl on the squad is just a nut. At least I got this person Parian who I can talk to, and that should be enough to help ease the passage of time, so long as she's there.
Definitely, yep.
So as we're going on to chapter 3, we get things from Clock Blocker's point of view, and things start off as the wards and a few PRT people are in a room listening to or watching a video from the previous semester of Parahumans 103, Theories and Patterns. Before you dive into the personalities, did you have any thoughts on this as a class? I was kind of wondering if you really got into this description of the class.
I did a little bit, but I took an exception at one point, and that was when they started talking about, the professor said, for example, why does virtually every parahuman ability have some application in confrontation and combat?
Mm-hmm.
I think that you could say that just as easily about the coffee mug on your table or your laptop, or the fan next to you. If you needed to, you could swing anything and hit somebody. So, like, thinking about Weld, yes, he can take a huge amount of damage and he can change his structure and that kind of thing, but it's not inherently confrontational or combat oriented. So I took some exception. It seems a little heavy handed the way the professor's approaching that. He does kind of say, is this human nature? And I say, probably. All of us kind of feel like we need to control our environments and we need to be prepared to protect that environment. And we'll be able to contemplate turning things into something that can be used in combat. I don't think that it's necessarily part and parcel of the parahuman's powers.
Okay. So joining this squad in the review in this auditorium is Glory Girl. And she's there. The rest of the team is there, and they're watching this thing, the class from the previous semester, as I said. And Clock Blocker gets a call from his mother. He's kind of stewing, wondering why they're even there. This whole class in his mind is a waste of time. He's thinking about he could be out there on the streets helping people. His mom calls, and his father is in a pretty bad way. And we find out as the chapter moves on that he's got leukemia and he's on a ventilator and time is running out. And his mother is asking him to come to the hospital.
Yeah, this is definitely not a good situation. And, on top of everything else that's happened, his father's really sick and he doesn't know how he can deal with it. He's asking how long it's going to be and that kind of thing. And you just don't know how he's going to cope, what he has left to go with. But then, Wildbow is setting us up a little bit again here, and should have jumped out at us ahead of time, but I didn't see it coming.
I made the mistake and missed pointing out that Clock Blocker in chapter 1, Clock Blocker was the hardest on Weld upon his arrival. And once again, we're reminded of that when Weld is trying to admonish people to pay attention to the video, and Clock Blocker's thinking, is he trying to get people to dislike him? At this point in time, Clock Blocker has no love for Weld, but the city's in ruin, his father's dying, and one of his closest friends in the world was killed in the attack. So Clock Blocker is dealing with some stuff.
Definitely. And, I try to put myself in his place. All this stuff's going on, practically rioting in the streets, people against each other, as we just talked about, thugs going after families and people being pushed into being protectors for neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And here they sit watching a video of a lecture. It's not even a live lecture.
Right.
And then Weld gets upset that they're making comments over the video. It's like, well, just rewind it then. I mean, if you're all bent out of shape about me saying something and you missed it, hit rewind. It's no big deal. So yeah, I'm with Clockblocker on this. This seems a little bit
much.
A little bit much, yeah.
So Clockblocker steps back into the classroom and asks Glory Girl to come outside. And he explains the situation to her about his father's illness. And he got an infection as a result of being injured during one of the tidal waves. He was undergoing chemo. And Glory Girl realizes that he would like to have her ask her sister, Panacea, to come and use her power on her father. And the two of them, it was a pretty good conversation between these two teens who are coming off this loss, this mutual loss in Gallant. And now they're talking and not really commiserating, but accepting the fact that they've got this shared grief.
It's a good point. Yeah. And I thought it was a really nice scene that Wildbow crafted here. We can all probably relate to that, not to this extent necessarily, but you know, you've got a friend, that friend's dating somebody, the friend moves away or goes to a different school, whatever, and all of a sudden, you know, you hung out, the three of you, for a while, and so there's this kind of shared thing with the people that are left behind,
right?
And so it's neat to see this connection here and to see Glory Girl kind of recognize that, because she was earlier on very much, it's my boyfriend or it's my family, and everybody else, if you get in the way, I'll run you over, kind of thing. And here she's being more trying to actively connect and relate to people, kind of recognizing the losses that she's experienced and that I can't afford to lose anybody else.
Yeah. So at one moment, while the two are out having this conversation about Clockblocker's father, Weld and Vista come out, and Weld is like, hey, you know, I trust there's a reason for you guys being out here. We stopped the tape. Come back in once you get settled. And as he goes back in, Clockblocker says an unkind thing about him, and Vista pipes up and says, he's trying. It's hard to be the leader, but he's working hard. And Clockblocker snaps at her and says, hey, what are you doing? Trying to channel Gallant here? Which was probably the worst thing to say, especially to the young girl who had a crush on Gallant, and in front of the late Gallant's super strong girlfriend who could punch a hole through your head. It was probably not a wise thing to say. Definitely a faux pas there.
Yeah, he stepped in it big time. But again, this is an emotionally charged situation. You know, the guy's best friend used to be kind of running the group, and now it's this new guy who's kind of oblivious, kind of a dork and not doing well, and he just found out his dad's doing much worse, and he's been thinking about his friend, talking with Glory Girl about it, and then he just kind of snaps and really messes up.
I mean, we've all put our foot in our mouths in a delicate situation like that. So he realizes it, but I mean, the damage is done. Good, big, massive credit to Glory Girl for keeping her composure while admonishing him on just how badly he screwed up, and is like, look, you need to. Vista runs off. She's a young girl, and she's devastated at having lost her team leader and this guy she did look up to. And Glory Girl is like, look, you need to set things right with Vista, and you need to give Weld a break. And at one point, Clockblocker is kind of shrinking and wondering if she's using her power to influence emotion on him. And it's kind of, okay, I got you. Yeah, I'll go take care of it, kind of thing. No problem. Yeah, yes, I'll go talk to Vista. And he runs off and locates Missy is her name, locates her in a stairwell, and the two of them have a good moment where they do something important and commiserate over the loss of their friend.
Again, another great interaction and showing that there's some healing happening. People trying to figure out how the pieces are going to fit together now that some of the pieces have been taken off the board. And, the thing that it's hard for me to keep in mind is that these are all teenagers.
Exactly.
Some are older than others, but, you talking about just saying the wrong thing. I can remember saying things that I thought were going to be funny and then realizing after the fact, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? And
Yeah.
pissing off good friends and really upsetting people and having to walk it back and say, look, I am a jerk. I was just blurting something out that was really stupid. But it oftentimes helps people to that vulnerability, recognizing and admitting you made a mistake helps people to sometimes actually get closer.
Yeah. After the emotions are dealt with and the teammates recover their composure, the scene shifts and the wards are out at the site of a pretty grisly group of murders. They come across three corpses having three people having been murdered in three different ghastly ways, and the travelers happen to be there. It was almost like the scene where the poor guy walks into the room, picks up the murder weapon. You're watching the television screen, and you're like, "Don't pick up the knife! Don't pick up the knife!" And as soon as he picks it up and looks down at the dead body, the butler walks in. It's like, "Oh my God, you killed him!" And the travelers are like, "No, we just got here. We didn't do this."
It was kind of funny because right now we're watching Bones, which is a show about a forensic scientist and an FBI agent, and they're always finding murder scenes and trying to figure out what happened. And they oftentimes are grisly and ritualistic and bizarre. And I was like, well, what's going on here? Come on, Wildbow, quit whipsawing me around, And so, but then, yeah, the travelers are there and they're like, all right, as opposed to the guy who is, stunned holding the knife and the butler sees him. This is like Batman or somebody being there and then just saying, look, I don't want to fight you, but I've got to leave. It wasn't
Right.
me.
Yeah. This ended up being a pretty good battle. This chapter 3 and part of chapter 4, the battle lasted across those two chapters. We got two different points of view from different characters. Kid win in chapter 4, but I think the upshot is that the travelers are a powerful team.
Definitely. And they maximize their abilities. We kind of saw that earlier with Flechette, and we'll see it later with other folks. But Wildbow's kind of expanding on and building on what was in earlier arcs, where Skitter at first, was just this bombardment of some kind of signals coming in, and then getting to the point where, okay, she can get the spiders to make her armor for her. And then, these continuing increases in control and ability and range. And so we're seeing that with these other folks as well. The stuff that Sundancer does to be able to use the burning orb to like turn water into steam for the classic ninja getaway cloud.
Right.
And Trickster doing all sorts of stuff. It's like, fine, shoot at me, and then I'll swap places with you, and then you'll be shooting at yourself. So it's neat the way they maximize their talents. Very entertaining battle going on. Even though the travelers are trying to hold back, they just want to leave. They don't want to hurt anybody. They just want to get away.
Right. Hold on to that thought. I did want to visit the what clock blocker had been going through, where he, at one point during a conversation, I believe it was with Vista, he pointed out how he when he was at the wards, he felt like he should be with his family. When he was with his family, he felt he should be out on the street doing patrol. And he was just all over the place emotionally. But during this fight, he noticed how calm he felt. And he realized that this is where he felt he needed to be, right here, right now. This is what I'm here for, he said to himself. Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's the reason we pursue our passions or try to realize our potential in various areas, is that we get to that area of hyper focus or flow, as it might be called, the zone, as it's called in sports.
I was just about I was just about to say that.
Oh man, sorry I beat you to it. But
no.
You can have all sorts of junk going on, but if you are doing the thing you feel like you are meant to do, even if it's, dangerous, even if it's scary, everything else kind of melts away. And you get that eye of the storm kind of thing where it's just like, wow, this is such a nice break.
Mm-hmm.
I might get hit by a 300-pound lineman at any minute, but right now I don't have to think about my financial situation, my medical situation, my school situation, fill in the blank. I just get to focus on this. I often quote, even though I'm not a Cowboys fan, I often quote the line from Emmitt Smith, where he says, thinking is what gets you caught from behind.
Right. Right.
When you're in the midst of it, you don't think. It's just happening. You're experiencing it. You're in that zone, the flow, and it's pretty beautiful. And that's why weekend warriors like us pay money to go out and run around and look out of shape just for trying to grasp that one moment of being in the zone again.
Yeah. Very true. So as we move into chapter 4, and as I said, we do get this part of the battle from Kid Wynn's point of view. And he realizes that they are, as you said, the travelers are holding back. And he probably because that, as he said, if they went all out, they would leave corpses behind, specifically Ballistic and Sundancer. Oh, and let me back up a second. Kid Wynn was kind of second guessing himself. He was pretty hard on himself. Turns out that he does have some learning disabilities, ADHD, and I forget the dyscalculia, I believe is the other issue.
I wasn't sure how to pronounce it, but yeah, I think that is it. He can't keep numbers in his head.
Mm-hmm. And so during the fight, he's chastising himself for having taken apart some of his equipment and not putting it back together, and feeling like he's letting the team down. But I mean, he's there, he's in the battle, he's trying to do the best he can.
Well, and again, I think Wildbow is pointing out here the impact that the devastation on Brockton Bay has had on these different folks, and that it's human nature to either underestimate or overlook the impact of external environmental forces and somehow internalize it. Oh, I should have done this better, or, wow, I'm lazy, or I've got this condition and it's causing problems. It's really hard to calculate or comprehend things, but we've all gone through a really rough patch the last few years. And so, on any given day, we can get to the end of the day and think, wow, I didn't get anything done. I wasn't productive at all. What's wrong with me? Why am I such a slacker? Or why am I so easily distracted by the latest crisis that's going on at work? That, oh, this form is late, or this person needs to take a vacation in the middle of all this stuff going on. How are we going to deal with that? When a lot of it is external stuff. It's hard to grasp the impact. And so it's interesting the way Wildbow is pointing this out from these different points of view and the different ways people try to grapple with it.
So the travelers end up getting the better of the wards and end up being able to beat a hasty retreat. Trickster during the battle is constantly teleporting people, ends up putting Vista up on the wall and put Weld up on the wall at one point. Poor Vista, she nearly chokes, being held up in the wiring that had been holding one of the corpses up on the wall. But Kid Win shoots at it and gets her down, and the travelers head on out. The wards gather the bodies, contact PRT headquarters to have them have a team come out and look at the rest of the bodies. They head back to the PHQ toward headquarters. At that point, Kid Win is given an assignment. He's going to be, after they debrief, Kid Win is going to be sent on a recruiting mission.
Before we get into that, I just wanted to touch on how they start trying to do a little detective work about the crime scene.
Yeah.
Because they mentioned there are 2 other crime scenes. There are 3 people dead at every one. And so that amounts to 9 victims.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start thinking, oh, hold on a minute. Who do we know that there's 9 people? And they mentioned the Slaughterhouse 9 villain group, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the first time that they've been mentioned?
No, if I'm not mistaken, all the way back in Arc 3, when Tattletale and Skitter, then Bug, were sitting outside the bank, and the 2 girls were talking about the cops and robbers aspect of things. And that was the first time that we heard mention of the Endbringers. And the Slaughterhouse 9, I believe, was also one of the groups that Tattletale had mentioned, the monsters, the Slaughterhouse 9, Nilbog, and the Endbringers. But this is the first time where we get a little more of a detailed look at what the 9 they might be about.
Yeah, so it seemed like, well, thanks for the reminder on that. I do seem to recall that now. But if I was a guy who cussed, then I would agree with what Clockblocker said, that that's all that we need, on top of everything else.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, we got this parahuman serial killer band of gypsies that are hanging out here now too. So it wasn't enough that the Endbringers were there, but now we've got the Slaughterhouse 9. So yeah, I'm hoping it's not that, but I have a feeling that things are going to get a lot worse before they get any better. But anyway, back to recruiting for Kid Win.
Yeah, he's been tasked to go and meet with a young kid who's been running around the docks in a mechanical suit, and he's been clocked at over 100 miles an hour. So they've got him pegged as a tinker, and they say, hey, look, why don't we send our resident tinker down to go meet with this kid? He heads down to the kid's apartment, meets with Chariot is his name, Trevor, and his mother, and they have a conversation about him possibly joining the wards. What were you thinking about that?
I had a few thoughts. I thought it was interesting that they decided to pick Kidwin for this assignment. I mean, it makes sense. He's a tinker. The recruit seems to be a tinker as well. But it's almost like somebody else had some deeper insight into this, that this might be a good way for Kid Win to feel more useful, that this would be a good way for him to connect and feel like he was helping not only a younger parahuman on a similar path to one he's followed, but also being a useful part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real positive thing in a lot of ways. And I can't remember if Weld was the one who was kind of giving him this task or if it came down from above, but it seems insightful from somebody that they thought this would be a good mission, if you will, for Kid Win.
We do get a pretty good description of the building that Chariot and his mother are staying at. Kind of a good description of how people are coping in this dire situation they find themselves in. Kids are running around all over the place, looking like they're being cared for by one guy. There's people sleeping in the hallways, if I'm not mistaken. And still, throughout this, Chariot's mom does her best to make her home seem clean and welcoming to this young superhero who's come to talk to her son.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's, again, human nature, I think, where even in the midst of chaos and destruction, people will try to carve out and make a home life.
Right.
Even in a, situations where things are very dire, they still try to make things presentable and try to keep things as normal or as human as possible.
Sure.
And so there's a great example of that.
So as they sit there and talk, Kid Win shows Chariot his hovering digital camera, and they discuss the perks of being a member of the Ward's team. And Kid Win points out that the Protectorate really wants to have as many tinkers on their payroll as possible. He also points out that that tinkers are considered a resource. So even if he didn't join the wards and have protection from a larger group, other people, if Chariot decided to try to set up a place to work for himself, others would realize he's there, come to try to fight him or coerce him into making devices for them, whether they be good capes or bad capes.
And that totally makes sense. You think about the early arcs where Tinker was trying to figure out what kind of tools she needed and was, Wildbow pointed out cool things that other people had. Arms Master had all of his cool weapons. Everybody needs their stuff, their equipment. And so people who can make super equipment are going to be super in demand. And so you kind of have a choice as a tinker: either get connected with a group that provides you with resources and provides you with some protection, and you can maybe make some money off of your stuff, or try to fly under the radar and risk being coerced into doing something you don't want to do.
And so as they're talking there, and Kid Win is showing him this cool looking hover camera, he discusses with Chariot the benefits of being on the wards. Among that is having access to some of the blueprints that some of the other tinkers have on, having access to their blueprints for inspiration.
Exactly. Chariot seems a little reluctant, especially when Kid Win talks about needing to share his inventions with people. And Chariot seems like he really wants to make money off of stuff or doesn't want to share. And Kid Win turns that on its head and says, well, other people need to share too. So you'll get to see the stuff made by the best in the business, Dragon. And that's when he's hooked.
Yeah, kind of like, oh, really?
And he's still saying, I'm kind of interested. So Kid Win has some kind of intuition here. It seems like that he's not sure what's going on, because he all along he's like, all right, what are the things that would sell me on this? And this would totally sell me. I mean, if you're somebody that likes to build things, wouldn't you like to see the stuff that's built by the best?
Right.
And the guy's like, yeah, but not as gung ho about it as Kid Win expected.
Yeah. So Kidwin notices that the during the flow of the conversation, every now and again, Chariot kind of seems like it's a forced hesitancy on his part. And he's like, look, you're going to get the same kind of deal I have. So if you're trying to, hold out for a better deal, that's not going to happen. You're wasting both of our times if that's the case. And Chariot assures him that he's not. So he, as the conversation winds down, he says, hey, look, gives him his business card and says, hey, come join. You're really going to have a good time. You have a opportunity to reach your full potential. Chariot and his mom thank Kid Win, and he heads on down out of the apartment and decides to put that little camera of his to good use and sends it up to look in the windows of Chariot's apartment.
Yeah. And it doesn't really talk about it, but Kid Win was really hard on himself. Why do I start something and not finish it? Why do I tear things apart that could be useful? But the flip side of that is that oftentimes people who don't have that kind of linear start at the beginning, work through a project to the completion, they tend to have maybe an intuition, or they can approach things tangentially, or they can be more open to spidey sense, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got this feeling that something's not as it seems, and he sends his robot drone up there, the camera, to check in, and sure enough, something's going on with Chariot. He's sending an email, encrypted email, that he's infiltrating the wards, it seems like.
Yeah. The email he sends to a crypt mail address and says, guy from wards came, I'm in. And with that, Kidwin sends a message back to base and tells Weld that call everybody back for a meeting, and maybe ought to call in Piggott. And that brings us to the end of this chapter, and we move on to chapter 6, and we get things. Pardon me. We move on to chapter 5, and we get things from Vista's point of view. Boy, she's having a rough time. I mean, there's just no way to in the overall scheme of this particular chapter, I think that taken as a whole, this grouping of Ward's interludes, it paints a pretty good picture. I mean, consider we haven't had any of our other primary characters in here. It's been about the Wards, and I've been pretty happy with how the amount of detail, when necessary, and the amount of character development in each of these separate chapters. And this one with Vista is no different. I think this is probably my favorite.
Okay, I could see that. I definitely agree that I hadn't really thought of it the way you framed it, but it is like this is all an arc of interludes, the different perspectives from the different folks, and it is neat to see how these folks are handling. But just the way we talked about how inept I was as a teenager, it was even worse when I was 13. It's amazing how much kids change in a short period of time like that. And so it's totally understandable that the youngest would be the one that's taking things the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of all the other dynamics that were going on, her having the crush and having a unbeatable rival for Gallant's attentions,
Mm-hmm.
Just made it that much harder. And then to have that person taken away, it's totally understandable that she'd be the one struggling it the most.
Skipping slightly ahead, Do you think when you look at this, do you think that Vista had a death wish, or was she just being, as she tried to put it, being real about the situation? At any minute, in a battle with a villain, I could die.
Yeah, I didn't really get the Death Wish vibe. I've always thought of that as, like the scene from Backdraft where Bull would just go into whatever, he didn't care. And, he just thought he was kind of invincible. She's got more, yeah, it might be a little fatalistic on the side of realistic, but after seeing what the Endbringers did, or just one of them, and all the people that were devastated, it seems like a natural reaction for a 13-year-old to say, well, yeah, I mean, this happened yesterday. Who knows what could happen today? So I don't see it as a death wish, though, so much.
We start off with Vista and Flechette visiting Parian and bringing some much needed supplies to her. And the three ladies are talking, and they get buzzed in and called back to base. And once they're back at base, they get debriefed from Kid Win and told about the situation with Chariot. On the way back, I think, is where Flechette kind of notices Vista's fatalistic, realist attitude about death, and she does end up passing that on to Weld. And later in the chapter, they have a discussion. What did you think about the situation with the request from Pigott that the wards deal with Chariot being among them as a spy potentially?
Well, this gets back to Pigott's kind of ruthless personality, I think. She's all about trying to control as much as she can. She wants to control the perception that people have of parahumans. She wants to try to control how the team interacts. She wants any kind of metrics or data she can to try to see where the performance is and try to make sure that's good. So any intel she can get, no matter how risky it might be, she probably feels it's worth it. So it's kind of sketchy given how fragile everybody is, but it fits with her persona. I think that she'd be like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's try to turn him into a double agent, basically feed him false information and that kind of thing. And, she acknowledges that there are other ones that they've been doing it with. And so
yeah,
it's kind of like, gee, many Christmas.
Yes, she's pretty good chess player herself. When they get back and begin discussing the possibilities of who Chariot might be working for, they discuss, could it be Coil, Fenrir's Chosen, or the Pure? The discussion, they decide that those other two groups are probably two races to consider working with Chariot, and that it has to be Coil. And that's where Pigott reveals to the team that there are currently 3 other individuals that they know of working for Coil, and they're feeding them upon occasion misinformation in order to game what they feed Coil. So she's taking care of business. Yeah, we know they're here. Dragon recognized them on facial recognition software, and we use them and let them think that they're doing okay.
Yeah, it's kind of walking the razor's edge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we as readers obviously have much more insight into how stacked the deck is for Coil.
Yeah.
And so, you get that wheels within wheels. Did he plan that his double agents or his infiltrators would get caught? And so he knows, or he's aware that they probably are feeding him a mix of real intel and false flag stuff. But, the chess match is turning into 3D chess here, kind of. And you wonder how a regular human could stack up against a
Mhm.
parahuman. But, luckily Pickett's got lots of super smart parahumans on her side too. So we'll see how it plays out.
So they come to an agreement. The wards accept that it's in the best interest of the PRT that they accept this danger, and they say, "Okay, we'll deal with it." And they're going to bring Chariot on board and use him much as they are the other three individuals and feed him misinformation upon occasion. The group breaks up. Vista heads off to get herself cleaned up. Weld had asked her to come see him after she gets cleaned up. She runs into Shadowstalker in the restroom, has a moment with her, goes and sees Weld, and Weld displays some compassion for her and asks, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I think displays some pretty good team leadership. He seems to have found a groove here.
I think so. And it makes sense. He was kind of thrown in the deep end. He felt like he screwed up. Other people helped him to kind of agree with that assessment. But now he's had some time to get a feel for folks. He seems like a perceptive individual. He's realizing, I think, really getting a handle on how messed up the environment is that these folks are in and how impacted they were by the loss of the team members. He's getting more of a handle on how to try to interact with them. And I think, as you said, that shows he does have good leadership qualities.
After having her meeting with Weld and crying, having a good cry and dealing with her emotions, accepting how she feels, taking some advice to heart from Weld, she goes out and goes from one compassionate situation to having to deal with Shadowstalker, which is just good descriptive confrontation. But God, Sophia has issues.
Oh my gosh. And I really have to applaud Vista for her being able to so quickly integrate with Weld said
Mm-hmm.
and being able to kind of fight off the crap that Sophia is throwing at her and recognize, okay, Sophia, for you to be this crappy to me, there must be some stuff that's really messed up with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then sure enough, she hits a nerve and Sophia can't take it.
Gets ready to punch her. And at one point, Vista's like, it'd almost be worth it to accept the hit and take the punch if that would mean Sophia would get accused of breaking her probation and get kicked off the team. But she shows some maturity, says, "Hey, look, the cameras are watching. You might want to rethink punching me." And that's where Sophia's like, I don't need this. I'm out of here. I'm going to go on a patrol. And that takes us on into the final chapter, into chapter 6, and we get things from Shadowstalker's point of view. And taken as a whole, again, if you set aside the fact that she's a sociopath or just a not very sociable person, in action, she's a heck of a cape.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the stuff that she can do. And I was almost reluctant to read this chapter. It felt like, kind of wading into a cesspool a little bit. It's like, man, I don't really want to know what's going on with her or Emma or any of her messed up stuff or whatever. So I was really happy the way things went later on in the chapter. But
really?
But yeah, good insight. And as you said, amazing the abilities that Shadowstalker has as a parahuman and what she's able to do with that.
So she has a phone call with Emma, gives her the lowdown, vents to Emma a bit about how she hates being on the team and these guys are children and I can't wait to get off my probation so I can bail on these punks. I don't want to be here. After the conversation, as the conversation drags, she notices some supply truck, what she thinks are supply trucks coming, and she decides to shadow them, so to speak. And after a few moments, Fenrir's chosen show up and begin to attack the supply trucks. Turns out that inside is Miss Militia and a contingent of PRT individuals, soldiers, and they try to fight off the attack from Hookwolf and his goons.
This was a pretty cool fight scene to begin with. Fenrir's chosen are definitely some tough folks and have some serious power, but Miss Militia, was expecting that there might be something happening, and so she's prepared, and they're doing some damage. And then Shadowstalker is kind of the unknown factor here, but is definitely helping out.
Yeah.
And is really using her skills well, recognizing, who this is going to work on, who's it not going to work on. And so I was happy with the fight scene just as it was going, and like, okay, well, maybe Shadowstalker isn't a total turd. This will be okay. But then finally, the star of the show shows up.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we've seen from everyone's favorite bug girl. And from her perch, Shadowstalker is using her crossbows and sending tranquilizer darts and some of the non-powered individuals who are part of the group of the Chosen, taking them down. And suddenly she notices that the group begins swatting and moving manically, and she sees a skinny girl come from out of the shadows and realizes it's Skitter.
And the line is, a feral smile spread across Shadowstalker's face.
Yeah.
So yeah, and she's talking about that she's a predator, and that the other folks are all prey, and so she sees this as her chance to finally get back. It's almost like she's been patrolling and doing extra patrols and stuff, just hoping she'd come across her so that she can settle the score.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, this is her big chance. In spite of everything going on, in spite of the great job she was doing in the middle of this battle, now it's like, oh no, I'm going to go after Skitter.
Yeah. Oh, Sophia. So then we have this pretty cool pursuit. And during this pursuit, we see that once again, Skitter has amped up her ability and has become more proficient at her use of swarm clones.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. The way you didn't know, at times I didn't know, obviously, which one was Skitter and which one was just a swarm mannequin, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then at other times it's like, are any of them Skitter? Are they all just swarms of bugs? So that was pretty neat. She's also gotten pretty good with the baton,
mm-hmm.
and just with tactics in general. Shadowstalker just expects Skitter to just run and try to escape, and Skitter at times stops and is waiting around the corner. So there's been a lot of advancement in
mm-hmm.
Skitter's combat skills.
Yeah, she makes effective use of her bugs. Oh, I do like the description where after Skitter had gotten one of the bags from the back of one of the trucks, and as she's making her way, several bugs flow through Shadowstalker's form. She's in her shadow state. Skitter doesn't even look at her, drops the bag, and is like, boom, I'm out of here. So she's got her bugs up in her radar, if you will. And the moment that one of them hits Shadowstalker, and she's like, oh, gotta go.
Great point. I had kind of glossed over that, but that was kind of a lacking area for Skitter. She tended to focus too much on the task at hand,
mm-hmm.
and not have kind of the passive alarm system set up, if you will, almost like having a lookout. But she's realized that she can use the bugs that way, and has amped up her skills so that she can detect when they're hitting some weird resistance or they're hitting some weird environment, and realize that, oh, that's not good. Gotta go.
And during the course of the combat between the two, you get another good description from Wildbow as to how Shadowstalker's breaker ability works. At one point, she's dealing with how she has to cope with the pepper spray, and then again how she has to cope with the bugs and moving in and out of her shadow state. And eventually, I mean, before we even get to that point, Shadowstalker tries to kill her.
Yes, she's got this kind of trap set up with an electrified fence, and only a chance contact with one of her crossbow bolts reveals that, with some sparks coming up. And then again, like you were saying, with Wildbow's description of the physics involved, or whatever you want to call it, with the transformation that Shadowstalker can do, we get more insight into possible weaknesses or how different things affect her in her shadow state.
Eventually, Shadowstalker gets Skitter down on the ground, and like I said, she tries to use one of her metal crossbow bolts to slice her neck. Fortunately, Skitter's costume prevents that. And then, while she's in her shadow state, several of Bitch's dogs run through her. Oh, the Gru shrouds the area in darkness, which hampers her mobility. Bitch's dogs run through her, dispersing her body while she's in her shadow state. She has to reform, and each time it's more and more painful. So Skitter and the Undersiders get the upper hand on her. Were you surprised to see that this kind of trap got sprung and the Undersiders were there in full?
Very surprised. I had no inkling that they would get back together. I could maybe see Gru have been helping Skitter out, but to have them all kind of join forces again and have them all, this obviously be a coordinated trap that was sprung by the whole group. It was one of those things where, I felt like, raising my hands in celebration all of a sudden, yes, yes, the band's back together. So that was pretty cool.
And Shadowstalker's wondering, was this whole thing an act where, the records had shown that she didn't have a group anymore and Noah's going to miss her if she's dead. And now Shadowstalker is being caught by the Undersiders, and she's noticed she's asking, was this whole thing a ruse? And Wildbow writes, no, Skitter spoke, and the bugs around her chirped, buzzed, and droned to match the pitch of her words. Things are different now, Skitter finished. So something's happened. The band's back together, but as Skitter said, things are different. And she tases Shadowstalker, and it's good night, Sophia.
Thank goodness. So I hadn't really thought about it until we were talking right now, but all this time we've been talking about the wards and how they're dealing with their totally messed up and chaotic environment. Everything's disrupted. And obviously some bad stuff happened with Skitter and the Undersiders, but just the way the wards are trying to heal themselves and reconnect, it's natural to think that the Undersiders must have tried to do something like that. When there's a giant shipwreck, even if the only thing that's floating is the porta potty that was on the ship, then you're going to hold on to the porta potty.
Sure.
And so whatever lifelines people have in a chaotic circumstance, they're going to try to grasp at those. It seems like they came to some understanding and they're back together in some sense, reconnected at least. Remains to be seen what that looks like, but it's great to see that they're at least interacting again.
Prior to Skitter sending her to La La Land, tasing her, Sophia Shadowstalker was surveying the situation. She saw Gru standing there with his arms folded, And she was kind of lamenting the fact that she hadn't been able to drive him out of the city. And she also says that a girl Shadowstalker didn't recognize stood just behind him, wearing a black scarf and pale gray mask. Any thoughts on that there, buddy?
Well, they call her Imp, I believe. And I don't remember seeing that anywhere. But, this whole trap and everything and elaborate plan smacks of like a coil type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't imagine Skitter wanting to get involved with that again.
Mm-hmm.
But Coil had that girl that he had kidnapped.
Dinah.
That was Dinah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering if maybe Imp is Dinah.
Oh.
She was able to help Tattletale predict things that they somehow got her away from Coil. So I don't know. That seems, like a reach, but I can't think of who else it might be.
Okay. Well, that's a good supposition. Let's see what you're right. See if you're right with that. And that brings us to the end of the arc. End of arc 9 there, buddy. What are your overall impressions of this one?
Well, it definitely threw me for a loop. All the Ward stuff going on and then having to deal with all the Sophia stuff. It was definitely a big sea change from what had been going on before. And I was wondering if we were ever going to hear from Skitter and the Undersiders again. And luckily, Wildbow didn't leave me hanging too long. And by the end, had me feeling right as rain. So, like I said, the band seems to be back together, at least in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And, Shadowstalker got her what was coming to her. So overall, I liked it a lot. I was, like I said, nervous there at the beginning, but I feel good at the end. So
cool deal. Awesome. And once again, it's time for Andy to announce his choice for key character of the arc. Whether hero or villain, cape or civilian, Andy will identify the characters that stood out to him, whether it's for good or ill. Andy, who's your selection and why?
Well, I liked Kid Win. I guess it probably just appeals to the geek and, amateur inventor in me. But the person I think I admired the most out of this whole thing was Vista.
Mm.
It's easy to overlook that she's the youngest person and that she's one of the wards that's kind of in the background. But Wildbow really pointed out how the trauma probably hit her harder than anybody. And yet she's able to come through it and even successfully navigate a conflict with Sophia and realize that, okay, you're being mean to me. And my first reaction would be that I'm the problem, but really you're the problem. You're the broken one in this situation, not me. And being able to say that and stand up to Sophia, I thought was pretty remarkable given the whole circumstances involved. So Vista is my choice.
Excellent. Yeah, I really like Miss Vista. She's a good character. And that's it for this episode, folks. Thanks for returning. As Andy said earlier, welcome to our new listeners. We hope that you're enjoying our little adventure through the world of Worm. We hope to catch you in our next episode. And until then, take care.
And as I said earlier, the band's back together. So really looking forward to the next arc. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us in this video. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more information in the link down below. Catch you later.